You are listening to Dove Valley Deep Divers with Erick Trickel
and Lance Sanderson.
Ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
On Overtime Media.
And it looks like we are live. Going to give Bawana Beast behind the scenes just a second here to enter in the Facebook group, our beloved Mile High Huddle Facebook group over that way. Looks like we are good to go. 5 green check marks all the way across the board. Mile High hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as per usual, is my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle's senior NFL draft analyst, and again, one of my great friends, Erick Trickel. Erick, what's going on, man? How we doing?
Doing good. I'm super excited. I'm counting down the days till I'm finally done at my job and I'm actually working full-time for MHH. So just looking forward to that. Excited for that. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss my first episode of Dove Valley Deep Divers next week too. So first one, but and super excited. It's going on. Just a lot of big changes and I'm happy for it. And I'm just super excited as always to be here talking Broncos football.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's always great to be talking Broncos football, just football in general with you. But I mean, you can have a couple of days off every now and again if you need one. I mean, I've taken.
No, I don't want to be like you and Nick.
Hey, you know what? I'm a busy man. I got a busy lifestyle behind the scenes that not everybody knows about. I work hard. I've got a lot of fun family vacations and stuff like that planned. And
if you make a slinging Coke joke, I swear.
I am your friendly neighborhood Coke dealer, so no, it is nice every now and again, you know, to have a break and to go have some fun family time and whatnot. We're gonna have some family time later tonight, guys. We're gonna have a short show for you guys. I know Erick has some stuff planned with his family. There's a big car show in town for my family tonight. We're gonna go check that out and have some fun as well. So, like I said, quick show, but it's gonna be a very fun show for you guys tonight because it was I believe Jeremy Fowler over at ESPN.com. Wrote out a list, and it was a poll from all of the NFL executives, front offices, head coaches, and players, and stuff like that, ranking the top 10 tight ends. They've been doing this for pretty much every position, but the other day, I believe it was yesterday, they put out the rankings for the top 10 tight ends in the NFL, and our boy Broncos tight end Noah Fant did not make the cut. And Erick, I don't think you've actually read this list, but just your immediate gut reaction to Noah Fant not being considered a top 10 tight end in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how he decided to pick his names, but it seemed like name recognition, and that's about it. Because I mean, a lot of tight ends on here is like watching them play. Like last few years, a couple of them are dealing with major injuries. Like, there's no reason for them to be in the top 10. Not over Noah Fant. I know he was dealing with a high ankle sprain last year, but he still put up over 600 yards and was in the top 6. I think was 6th overall in total yards receiving from a tight end, missing a game. Noah Fant had a really good year, and everybody always seems to just sweep that under the rug, and they want to sit there and make these cries that aren't true. But Noah Fant fully deserves to be on this top 10 list because the one that he made, there's at least 4 names on there that I can see that they weren't deserving of it, not over Fant.
Right, and like I said, this was a poll of NFL executives, scouts, front office personnel, coaches, players. I mean, I don't exactly know how many people voted on this thing or what exactly were the parameters of it, but it does seem a little shady to me.
To interrupt real quick, it seems like they interviewed the Philadelphia front office because both those tight ends made it, and neither one of them deserves it.
Well, I mean, the New England front office has to be in there as well because John O. Smith and Hunter Henry both made it, and I'm not necessarily sure that you can make the argument for either one of those guys. I mean,
you can make the argument for Hunter Henry, and I will.
Well, and that's all fine and groovy. I mean, when he's on the field, he's damn sure a great tight end. But for the most part, the guy he's always hurt. I mean, he had a torn ACL. He's had hamstring issues. He had a hip issue, if I remember correctly. I think there was some concussion problems in there as well. He never really took off with the Los Angeles Chargers after they drafted him. I believe he's a second-round pick back, 2015, 2016, something like that. So, and he's never really taken off as this true elite receiving tight end, and he's a great blocker, and he does have great receiving ability, but your best ability is availability, and he just hasn't been that kind of a player for the last 5 seasons.
I mean, you're not entirely wrong. I mean, he hasn't ever played a full season. Last year that was the case too. He missed 2 games. He missed 4 games in 2019, missed all of 2018. He missed 2 games in 2017. and all but one in 2016. So, I mean, there's definitely a track record here. But, I mean, like, tight ends, you play a very physical position. I mean, most tight ends, they do miss a game or two every season. And so he just kind of follows that trend. I mean, he still has put on 55 games that he's played in, he's still put in over 2,300 yards. Right. That's pretty good. He's, I mean, catching almost 70% of his passes. I mean, 21 touchdowns over 51 games. Like, those are some ridiculous numbers. And I'm not going to hold the fact that he's been hurt against him. I mean, last year, 14 games. And I mean, and the biggest reason why I think that label is there is for missing that 2018 season with that injury.
Right. Well, and that was the year that he had the torn ACL, but it just seems like he's always nicked up. And I mean, you went through it, and it may not be as bad as I thought that it was, but still, I mean, there is a point to being available. And I mean, Noah Fant, he played, I think it was all 16 games his rookie season. Last year, he only played 14 games. He was dealing with a high ankle sprain, but just the athleticism and the receiving prowess that Noah Fant has, he might not be quite as good of a blocker as Hunter Henry is.
Games last year, by the way.
So apparently I have a wrong list here because the one that I have shows him is only playing in 14. But regardless, I mean, he may not be the as great of a blocker as Hunter Henry is, because I think he's a fine blocker. He's probably a top 5-6 blocker in the NFL at the position. But I mean, the athleticism, the ability, the big play ability that he has, the explosiveness that he has, that to me just automatically bumps him up, even with poor quarterback play. And this all goes into, there's multiple different aspects you got to take into consideration here. I mean, quarterback play, the scheme, what are the coaches asking these players to do? This is a multifaceted conversation. It's a very fun one as well. But before we get any deeper into this, I want to say hello to the chat, to everybody that's in here joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Cody Potter, Greg Smith, Aaron Litch, Mo jumping in the house, Dave Glassman saying what's up here. We've got Chad Hanner from Tulsa, Oklahoma, showing that Broncos country is not a geographical location. It is, in fact, a hashtag state of being. Obviously, our buddy Malcolm Brown up in Homer, Alaska. We've got our pal in the house, Bawana doing the things behind the scenes. I'm Supreme. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Now, I want to get into the list here because this list is very precarious in my particular opinion. They have at the very top of the list George Kittle, the tight end for the San Francisco 49ers. And while that's a fine selection, in my personal opinion, Travis Kelce, and everyone's been saying his name the wrong way for everyone's information, it's not Kelsey, it's Travis Kelce. He's the best tight end in football. He's not the greatest blocker, but as far as a route runner, as far as an athlete, catch radius, what he does to make that offense in Kansas City click and turn and burn, they run through him. It's not the Tyreek Hill show. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is just a god. He's the unicorn, but really the offense flows through Travis Kelce, in my opinion.
I mean, you're wrong. 3-4 years ago, I mean, I would agree with you, but no, best tight end in the NFL right now is Darren Waller.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about catch radius, athleticism, route running, like this guy's a receiver in a tight end body playing tight end. He's a better blocker than Travis Kelce is. I mean, Kelce isn't bad and Darren Waller's not either. Like, I'm partially poking at you because, I mean, there's 3 tight ends that if you say they're the best tight end in it, I'm not really going to argue with you. I mean, Travis Kelce is one of them, George Kittle being the other, who, if you want to talk about injuries, I mean, he's been struggling to stay healthy as well. I mean, those are the top 3 tight ends in the NFL, and it goes those 3 and then everybody else.
And you're not wrong there. Darren Waller's fantastic, and he's been really making a name for himself, especially against the Broncos.
He has the best bang for your buck value deal, like the Raiders do with his in the NFL, like probably ever at the moment.
Right,
it is insane.
And it's crazy just because, like you said, he was a wide receiver at Georgia Tech and then made the transition to tight end in the NFL because he's 6'4", 245, something like that. But he runs very well. He's very athletic. He has a big jump, big catch radius. It's amazing. And I'm not going to fault you for saying Darren Waller's the best tight end in the NFL. It's hard for me to say this. I don't necessarily like him as a blocker, but the way that they use him is kind of the way that I want to see the Broncos use Noah Fant, who is, in my opinion, a better blocker than, quite honestly, other than George Kittle, who's the best blocking tight end in the NFL. Noah Fant's very underrated in that aspect. He's got the willingness and the desire. He's got some technique aspects he needs to work on, but the strength is there. He wants to do it. I would put Noah Fant over Travis Kelce and Darren Waller. I don't know if you can really argue that. It's Darren Waller is great as a receiver, but as a blocker, he's not an inline tight end. You want to have him flexed out and use that athleticism. I disagree.
There are multiple games out there where he will handle pass rushers and pass blocking,
right?
Run blocking, like he does. Like his technique's better than Noah Fant. He's stronger than Noah Fant. He holds his own better than Noah Fant.
Okay,
Darren Waller is better.
But I mean, every evaluation, every analyst has their own, the eye of the beholder here. I think Noah Fant's a little bit better, but that's just my personal opinion. But I mean, going back to
being wrong.
I definitely am, at least in your opinion. Everyone has their own flavor, though, and I think that Noah Fant has the ability. It might not be all the way there right now. Darren Waller is an interesting study because he came along so fast. He was, I think, a former 6th-round pick, like I said, out of Georgia Tech, played wide receiver, converted to tight end, got into some drug issues over in Baltimore, became a free agent, and the Raiders picked him up and turned him into this dynamo. And he really is, like Travis Kelce, he is the key cog in that offense to make it go. And if you want to argue George Kittle, that's fine. He's a great athlete, another late-round gem. These top 3 guys are not first-round picks. That speaks to what their ability is and the way that they've developed and become these elite pass catching tight ends and elite blocking tight ends and everything. So it's really fun to get into that. Now,
well, real quick, I'm going to pound my chest a little bit when it comes to Darren Waller. I remember when he came out, it was not long after I started doing this, back when Mile Huddle was new and young and before it is what it is today. And I remember writing up a couple articles on Darren Waller saying that Denver needs to take him and convert him to tight end.
And kudos to you. I actually kind of thought the same thing. I wasn't nearly as prevalent in that, but the big body and the way that he worked his catch radius and everything at Georgia Tech, where they didn't use Georgia Tech runs a triple option offense. They don't really use the passing game very often. And as a blocker on the outside, sure, I definitely would agree with you where he was blowing guys apart. At the wide receiver position. I haven't seen it quite the same way that you have. I also haven't done probably nearly the study on games as you have as well. So I'll just, bow out to you in your opinion on that. But getting back to the list here, the list that Jeremy Fowler and these executives put up, they have George Kittle number 1, Travis Kelce number 2, and Darren Waller number 3. This is where the list gets even kind of more precarious to me. And it's Mark Andrews at number 4, the tight end out of Baltimore. This is a guy that, while he's an outstanding blocker, he's not a guy you want to use very much between the 20s. He's not a guy that can really take the top off of the defense. He's got a big catch radius and whatnot. He's really a red zone threat, and that's the way that Baltimore uses him. He had I think it was 7 touchdowns. Let me pull it up really fast. He had 7 touchdowns last season receiving. Let's see. He had 58 total catches, 701 yards, 7 touchdowns. So they used him quite frequently, but for the most part, the big bang for your buck with Mark Andrews is as a red zone threat. I mean, this isn't a guy that's very shifty. He's not the greatest athlete in the world. He jumps high, has a big catch radius, and just bullies guys around. To me, I want more explosiveness from the tight end position, especially given the young athletes that we have at the position right now in, Kittle, Kelce, Darren Waller, Noah Fant, Evan Ingram, even a Jonnu Smith as well, who I have not on my top 10, but still he made the list in the top 10. Now, Mark Andrews, Eric, what do you think about
him? He's probably the best blocking tight end there, or one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. And he's actually really good between the 20s. He's not just a red zone threat.
I disagree.
I mean, his success rate is between the 20s is 60%.
What's his target rate, though?
His target rate was consistently over 20%, which was the second highest.
Wow, okay.
Behind Marquise Brown. I mean, Mark Andrews is extremely good. He may not be this great athlete, but he's consistent. He's reliable. He's Dallas Clark, right? That's the Colts tight end, right?
Yeah, the one that had Peyton Manning.
Yeah, like Dallas Clark, and he's doing the. I mean, he fits with. He does fit exactly with what Baltimore wants to do, as Buana said in the chat, and I think you mentioned it as well. But I mean, he's just good. He's reliable, and I don't know what else to say. I mean. 12.1 yards per reception. I mean, you're not getting that just being a red zone threat.
Right.
You're not getting over 700 yards being just a red zone threat.
Right. I guess that goes into recency bias. And again, you do more film study than I do. So apologies for being wrong on that. It's just, you see the highlight plays of some of these other tight ends where they're showing that athleticism over the middle of the field and making these big, long receptions and whatnot. And then you watch Mark Andrews and even Mike Gesicki as well down in Miami. You know, they're really primarily used in the red zone for the most part. Like that's the highlight plays that they make. They're the guys going up and catching those 50-50 balls in the red area. So that's just kind of, I guess that's my opinion, which is probably a wrong one, but whatever. I mean, it is what it is. Moving on here, TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant's teammate down in Iowa, the number 8 overall pick, the tight end for the Detroit Lions. This one's interesting as well. Talk about a guy that has been mostly misutilized, a very good blocker, a decent red zone target. Let's see here. He had it was actually used very well last season, 67 receptions for 723 yards. That was third most in the NFL and 6 total touchdowns and he played all 16 games. He had some injury issues, I believe, in his rookie season to where he wasn't really utilized that much. So Hawkinson is a guy that I mean, you're not the number 8 overall pick for no reason. This is a good athlete. He's a good blocker. He's really good all around tight end. Eric, what do you think about TJ Hawkinson being at number 5? Number 5.
I mean, I think that it's a very fair spot. I mean, honestly, their first 5, I don't really disagree with from ESPN. I think they're all fitting. I mean, TJ Hawkinson, he's another guy. He's a really good blocker. He's got, I mean, I would put him over Mark Andrews if he was able to stay healthy last year. But, I mean, right now, Mark Andrews, he's been consistent. He's been reliable for a little bit longer. TJ Hawkinson, he's got the athleticism that Mark Andrews doesn't have.
Right.
He's up there for being one of the best blockers in the NFL, and he can make some big plays between the 20s and the red zone. I mean, these are just good tight ends, and it's after them that my issues with ESPN really comes into play. And it's right after those two, because we made our own list, and I have it as Waller, Kels, Kittle, Andrews, Hawkinson, and then it would be Fant for me right there at number 6.
Right. So for me, it would be Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller, and Noah Fant. I value that explosive athleticism that he has over TJ Hawkinson, and then Mark Andrews right after that. But the list after this just gets wonky, and especially at number 6 overall, Dallas Goddard, the tight end from the Philadelphia Eagles. And I mean, you want to talk about an uber athlete. This kid is just incredibly athletic, really long, lanky. But I don't understand how you can put Dallas Goddard on this list right now, especially over a Noah Fant. It doesn't make sense to me. Noah Fant had he had more catches, more yards, and I think even more touchdowns than Dallas Goddard. Yeah, he had. So let's see here. Noah Fant had 62 receptions. Dallas Goddard had 46. Noah Fant had 673 receiving yards to Dallas Goddard's 524, and they had the same amount of touchdowns. It's just it's a wild to me that people see more athleticism and more ability in Dallas Goddard than Noah Fant. It's just wild to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Dallas Goddard, he's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm no argument there. I just don't think that he's top 10 tight end at the moment. I mean, he hasn't taken this big leap that a lot of Eagle fans think he has. And Zach Ertz, I mean, he's another one on the tight end. Since we're talking about the Eagles, I'm going to talk about them both real quick.
Yeah.
They're both just, they're consistent, but they're not consistently as good as guys like Mark Andrews or TJ Hawkinson or even Noah Fant. And looking at their receiving success rate, their tours, I mean, they're sitting there 16th for Dallas Goddard, and Ertz isn't even listed.
So I actually have fantasy football stats pulled up last season, and Zach Ertz was the 31st ranked tight end in terms of receiving yards. He only had 1 touchdown last season as well. Now, it is an interesting case study because the Eagles last season, they had really bad quarterback play. I mean, Carson Wentz had arguably his worst season as a pro, probably his worst season as a pro, and then they had Jalen Hurts in there as well. It's hard because the quarterback play for those guys was even more inconsistent than what Noah Fant got with Drew Lock and Jeff Driscoll, and even the game that they had Brett Rippon in there. But still, I mean, Zach Ertz, if this list was made 4 years ago, he's easily tight end 4. He might even be tight end 3 behind Kittle and Kelsey, and that might even be a lie there as well because George Kittle really came on over the last couple of seasons. So Zach Ertz, for what he is, and maybe we'll see a new resurgence with him. It sounds like he might be a Buffalo Bill here soon. I mean, there's been trade talks about that. But Zach Ertz being on this list, I believe they have him at number 10. As of right now, with the injuries that he had last season, the inconsistency of the quarterback play, him not putting up he's been really a statistical anomaly, and he's not a great blocker either at the tight end position. Like, he's really more of a true slot, stretch the field, vertical threat tight end. He's not a great red zone threat. He is the guy that you want to have between the 20s. It's just strange to me that Zach Ertz and Dallas Goddard are on this list over Noah Fant.
And here's the thing with talking about Noah Fant and all this stuff. Well, obviously quarterback play goes into it, and Noah Fant still did more with the quarterback that was just right there with the Eagles quarterback than those two guys. Yep. So, like, this is the one that I don't see how anybody can put them on there except for name recognition. Yep. Dallas Goddard, he was a small school kid who came into the NFL and had a lot of hype surrounding him, and his name still every year is mentioned as, this is the year he's going to break out, and he still has yet to do it. So I don't know. Those are two of the ones that I really don't get with or agree with. Hunter Henry, we've just discussed him. I'm fine with him being on there. He had a really good year last year, and if they're looking at it just last year, then which is how I did when I made my list, I was looking specifically mostly at last year. One exception was George Kittle. But I mean, Hunter Henry, had a good year. Evan Ingram, I mean, he had a solid year, but I mean, injuries just hasn't been that great. His blocking is some of the worst blocking there is in the NFL. And Johnny Smith, as much as I like him and as much of a weapon that he can be, it's weird to me that he made the list over it. I mean, other names, just not talk about George Fant. Mike Gesicki, he didn't make this list, and he's been a really good playmaker at tight end. Yep. Logan Thomas, he deserves to be on this. I know that he's a former quarterback and everything like that, but he's transitioned extremely well. Yes, talking about Darren Waller, he's kind of following the same the same path. And Rob Gronkowski, I know you're going to sit here and say that it was a down year for him, but it really wasn't. He was far more efficient last year. Was a top tight end for them. Made a bunch of big plays. Was reliable, good blocker. It was Rob Gronkowski of old. He just didn't have to be the primary guy like he had to be in New England.
Right. And I guess that's where it comes down to is the efficiency. And I mean, we're looking at it as base statistics here, at least I am, the catches, yards, touchdowns, stuff like that. And Gronk had a fine season last year. He had 45 catches for 623 yards and 7 touchdowns, which, I mean, 7 touchdowns for Rob Gronkowski at 31 years old is just phenomenal. He took a year off of football and came back and still played at a high level. I'm not saying that he was bad last year. It's just not the same typical Gronkowski that you see. I mean, this is a recency bias that I have. He's not having, 80 catches for 1,000 yards and 10, 12 touchdowns. It's not the same Gronkowski, but also it goes into, again, the quarterback play and what other receiving weapons are around you.
He didn't have 10 touchdowns. He had 7. Sorry, that wasn't good enough.
Well, I'm not saying
I had to poke fun at you for that one.
No, it's definitely. I'll agree
with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Those 3 extra touchdowns is what did it for you.
No, not really. It was just he wasn't that big prevalent receiving threat that we'd seen before. I mean, he had, like I said, he had 45 catches and 600 yards. Like we're used to seeing Rob Gronkowski back, in the 2015, 16, 17 seasons. He had 80 catches for 1,000 yards and 10, 12 touchdowns a season. He was the best tight end in the NFL. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with what he did last year. It's just going, and this list was actually based for 2021. So is Gronkowski going to be able to have that same and sustain that success
so
they had last season?
They were looking at it for 2021.
Yep.
I mean, that's a good question. Can Gronkowski sustain that? We don't know. And just so you know, his 45 catches is actually more in line with his career average than the big ones. He only had, 2 seasons, 3 seasons over 70, 1 season at 69. But I mean, talking about target share and everything, again, it comes down to weapons on there.
Right.
New England, they didn't have those weapons. Tampa Bay does.
Right. I mean, Julian Edelman, I don't even think I can think of another receiving threat that the Patriots had.
N'Keal Harry.
Yeah, well, I'm not talking about I'm talking about when Gronkowski gets at the height of being ground.
I'm going to take this opportunity to crap on the New England Patriots for how bad they are at drafting. I've never understood where this thing that Bill Belichick's a great drafter comes from. he isn't. Like, it hasn't been for a long time. They've had some big hits in the mid-late rounds, and they're consistently whiffing worse on earlier picks than the Broncos do. Like,
right.
It's just weird to me that there's this weird, it's just weird.
Yeah.
Weird stigma, weird whatever.
Got a quick shout out to Andrew Baker here, donating some stars here. Hashtag Mile High Huddle for life. Go hashtag Eric Lance Beast. Love the deep dive. It's beyond my intellect, but love the insight. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us, and thank you all for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. We already ran through the rest of Jeremy Fowler's top 10 here. It was Dallas Goddard, then Hunter Henry, Evan Ingram, Jonnu Smith, and Zach Ertz. Now, Eric, we were at number 5 on our list for the most part. Who are the last 5 top 10 tight ends that you have in your opinion?
Well, Noah Fant was number 6. Then I had Logan Thomas right behind him. I had Mike Gesicki, Hunter Henry, then Rob Gronkowski.
Okay, so the last 5 that I have, so I'll just run down the top 10. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller, Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, that's the top 5. Mark Andrews, Logan Thomas, Mike Gesicki, Rob Gronkowski, and I have Evan Ingram. I actually like Evan Ingram. He's not your prototypical tight end, though. This is a big slot receiver. I think that the way that New York could actually use him, and they didn't necessarily use him that well last season for the most part in that aspect as far as the receiving prowess. He had 63 catches, 654 yards, and a touchdown, and he played all 16 games. It's the added receiving prowess to him, the athleticism that he has, the ability to create those explosive plays. I think Evan Ingram is a little bit underrated for the most part. I know that the NFL executives have him in the top 10, but for what he is as far as a player, I think that there's a big untapped potential with him as a receiving threat in this league.
What year was he drafted again?
That would have been the same year that it was OJ Howard, Evan Ingram, Bucky
2017.
Hodges. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It might have been 2008. It was one of the, or actually was he
it was 2017, the same year as Garrett Bowles, because
and
there
David Njoku.
There was some stuff reported that if Garrett Bowles wasn't available for the Broncos, Evan Ingram would have been their pick.
Wow. Okay. And I like David Njoku a lot better than Evan Ingram, and David Njoku has quite honestly been miscast as a Cleveland Brown, and I'm not exactly even sure where he's at right now, but that's another guy that might be sneaky if he's used in the right situation. Is he still with the Browns? Okay. Well, I know they got Austin Hooper last season, and he kind of bit into the target share there for David Njoku. Going back to the list, though, it's just, again, it's wild to me that, Mike Gesicki's left off of this. Logan Thomas is left off of this. Rob Gronkowski, obviously Noah Fant is out of there as well. To have Dallas Goddard, to have Zach Ertz, to have Jonnu Smith, who I like Jonnu Smith as well. I actually wanted to put him on my top 10 list. Not the best blocker, really good athlete, great receiver. And the way that Tennessee used him in play action with Ryan Tannehill coming off of the run action of Derrick Henry and whatnot, use him over the middle of the field, stretching the seams and stuff like that. That's another guy. Jonnu Smith might be an honorable mention at least. Eric, what do you think about that?
Jonnu Smith would definitely be an honorable mention. He just kind of flies under the radar. And part of the issue with him too, playing for Tennessee, I mean, he got plenty of recognition from these executives that made this list, but in terms of the wider scope of it, he doesn't get that much recognition. Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, they take all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously what A.J. Brown's doing on the outside, they had Corey Davis there as well. And now they get Julio Jones coming in this season. Not that Jonnu's going to be affected by that, because he's one of the two pair that they have with Hunter Henry up in New England now. And I'm kind of curious how that's going to work. Can you project just a little bit Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith with Cam Newton or McCorkle Jones up there in New England? What do you think about that combination? That might be pretty lethal.
I mean, it could be. I'm very interested to see what they end up doing, either quarterback. But I mean, who are the receivers still? Like, do they have anybody? That's the big thing with them, is that they consistently can find decent tight end help. It's just they just can't get receiver help, and you have to have solid receiver help to be able to consistently move the ball.
Right. Well, and I mean, going back to when Hunter Henry was drafted, there was a lot of people saying baby Gronk, like this kid's going to be the next Gronkowski. He's a great receiver, great blocker. Then you have the athletic freak in Jonnu Smith. Is this Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez 2.0 up that way? Is that kind of the scope of the offense that they're going to run? I mean, they had Julian Edelman, but they don't have anybody like that at the receiving position. So
are one of them going to go on a killing rampage?
Oh, come on. You had to go that way? Really?
I did have to go there. You mentioned that guy's name, so yes, I have to go there.
Right, I'm just talking about on the field and the way that Josh McDaniels.
The two tight ends that they had, Ron Gronkowski and his partner, yes, this could be something similar to that. I mean, obviously you can't remake that. Right. We can do something similar to it.
Right. It's a very interesting pair to me. Now, we got into kind of an interesting, since we're talking about the tight end position, let's round this around to the Broncos before we get out of here. We were having this conversation with John behind the scenes about the Broncos tight end position. Obviously, Noah Fant, who we think is a top 5-6 tight end in the NFL. But behind him, it's a myriad of issues. This is going to be a very interesting camp battle. Quite honestly, you've got Erick Salbert, you've got Andrew Beck as well, Albert Okwuegbunam, who is coming off of that torn ACL, Austin Fort, who's coming off a torn ACL as well. The second tight end position is kind of up for grabs right now. Who do you think is the leader in the clubhouse as of right now, based on any insight that you potentially have?
No one. I mean, like, looking at it is Andrew Beck. He's not an inline tight end. Albert Okwuegbunam, he's not an inline tight end. Erick Salbert, he's not the best inline tight end. Austin Fort, we have no idea what he is. There's another tight end on the roster too that I can't think of the name.
Yeah, I'm forgetting the name there.
That tells you everything you need to know there.
Pretty much.
They don't have a number 2 or number 3 tight end. Like, I understand that Nick Van Nett, a lot of Bronco fans hated him and everything, but he was still the best blocking option they had, the best guy to be the number 2 guy. They don't have anything like that. So it's going to be an interesting battle, to say the least, of how it's going to work out, I guess, because you're just trying to fit a bunch of people who don't actually fit that into that role. So we'll see what happens. Knock on wood, it turns out well.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But I'm very, everyone's talking about, the Achilles heel of this Broncos team being, the linebacker position, what's going on at right tackle, Lloyd Cushenberry, Quinn Miners at the center position, but tight end too. And not that Pat Shurmur likes to use a lot of tight end too. He's more 3 wides, 1 tight end, 1 running back, 11 personnel.
Don't say that to Nick. Nick will jump you for it.
Why?
Because in actual league average, Denver was actually right there with the league average last year.
Okay.
And Pat Shurmur pretty consistently has been right there around the league average. But I mean, one thing you have to factor in is that his last year in New York, they dealt with so many injuries at wide receiver. Last year with the Broncos, they dealt with injuries at wide receiver. That does play a factor into using more tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There was a time that the Buffalo Bills game, I believe, later towards the end of the season, they had 4 tight ends on the field at the same time. But typically, going back to the Pat Shurmur offense, from what he did for the most part within Minnesota, even when he was with the Cleveland Browns, even at New York for a time there, it was mainly 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers, and we're going to try to spread the field vertically. That's what he does. So,
not just vertically.
It's
not spreading it vertically. It's just maximizing your spacing.
Right.
Like, spreading out, I don't think is the right term. I think it's maximizing your spacing is the best way to actually put it. Because, he's going to spread it out deep as well, but he's going to try to maximize all that spacing, having your deep route to open up more everywhere else.
A lot of intermediate shots, intermediate crossing routes, deep shots over the top. And then for some reason, we didn't see it last year, but the passes to the running backs out of the backfield was something that this team desperately needs, and they've got a couple of options now. Javonte Williams,
we saw it in the final about 5 weeks or so when Drew Lock started to look good.
Yeah, we did, and that was the design of the offense, was to 1 read, 2 read, check down to the running back out in the flat.
Read the safety, take the high shot, take the low shot, or take the dump off.
Yep, and it's. I don't know. This season is going to be so interesting to see how and if Pat Shurmur is going to evolve himself into a better play caller, which probably is not going to happen. He's very rigid.
He wants old dog new tricks.
That's very true. But anyways, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Great conversation tonight, Eric, and I appreciate you for punking me several different times.
Anytime. Just wait till September 26th. I'll punk you in person.
I mean, that's going to be great. It's going to be really great. Beat me down if you have to. I'm not scared. I can take a bullying every now and again. I mean, you bully us all the time in the group chat. No, he doesn't. He really doesn't, guys. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. You guys can find me on Twitter at Sanderson MHH, and for Erick at Erick Trickel. Also for Bawana Beast, John Cronenberg at John K MHH as well. While you guys are at it, John, let me have the sticks here for a second. Make sure you guys, where are all of our banners at? I'm not sure where they went. There they are. So while you guys are at it, follow at Mile High Huddle. That's the mother account. That's where you're going to get instant news and analysis on your Denver Broncos, including film pieces like the Jerry Jeudy piece that I have coming this week. What Erick's going to be doing here directly as a full-time staff member, opinion articles, anything regarding Denver Broncos news, you're going to find it at Mile High Huddle on Twitter. Also, Facebook supporters, make sure you guys go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. Click the blue Become a Supporter button. That's where you're going to get premium content like Kellerman's Corner, which is hot takes that hold water on Sundays at noon. And also, like my buddy Erick's show, The Trickel Zone. Erick, what do you have on The Trickel Zone this week?
Well, hopefully my power doesn't go out like last week. Had some issues there. I mean, can't do an internet show without power. So hopefully I'm actually able to do it in the morning and no power issues. And instead of doing it last week, we'll be talking about the defensive training camp battles that are obviously coming up in training camp.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show. Like I said last week, safety number 3 is going to be very intriguing. What does Baron Browning do? What does Justin Strnad do to potentially unseat Josie Jewell from his starting role? Going to be a very fun show for you guys. Guys, if you guys are financially able to do so and willing to do so, head on over to huddleuppod.com. That's the merch tent. That's where you guys can get yourself a hat, a t-shirt. There's a hoodie, a face mask, a coffee cup. There's a onesie for your baby, something for the guys, something for the gals, anything to suit your fancy. If you're able to do so, huddleuppod.com. That's where you're going to be able to get that. And if you guys are not financially able to do so, or just don't really want to because Rock and Schwagger, your favorite podcast, is not kind of your bag, you guys all need to be doing these 3 things, which is number 1, subscribe. Wherever you guys are watching this podcast, on Facebook, YouTube especially, Twitter, Twitch, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you guys get your podcast content, subscribe to Mile High Huddle. Like every video you guys see, especially on YouTube. It's a great way to help the show. And if nothing else, if you guys love it and you want it to get in front of as many Broncos fans as possible, share it. Share it. That's the greatest, most organic way you can do to help us grow our following and grow what we do best here at Mile High Huddle, which is cover your Denver Broncos. Now, before we get out of here and go enjoy the rest of our weekend, guys, Erick, you got anything else for us?
Well, I want to shout out Peter Middleton here for a donation of stars. We appreciate that, Peter.
Thank you.
And I also appreciate the kind words, man. I mean, thank you for your congratulations. Thank everybody who reached out to me on Twitter and congratulated me for it. I mean, I remember when I started doing this years ago, I never thought that I'd be able to do it full time. Being able to leave what I do, being able to work from home with my daughter and not have to have my mom come watch her, like, super excited for that. I'm super excited to be putting out more content. And more content with substance. Film articles are coming back. I'm going to be aiming to do a film article every single weekday. So look at a bunch of those coming every week. Super excited. Thank you again, Peter, for the congratulations, man. I'm super excited.
Yeah, and thank you, Peter, for being a staunch supporter of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I know you're over in Turkey. It's 3 a.m. when we go to start, and every single week you're here in the chat, getting the chat going, showing your support, and we definitely appreciate you. I wish that I could send you a T-shirt. I'm not sure if we ship to Turkey or not, but I would definitely be able to do that. I would be willing to do that if I was able to, so maybe I'll look into that. Peter, again, thank you for everything. You're not from Turkey anymore, but from Cambodia. Okay, so that's kind of a new change there, but anyways, Peter, we definitely appreciate you guys. Now, again, thank you all for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. That's going to do it for us. You all stay safe and take care. Have a great and safe rest of your weekend. We'll see you guys next week, same time, same place. And as always, before we get out of here, go Broncos.